Chasing the stars, we'll stride into the dawn. Never back down till the battle is won. Face each foe with hearts brave and true, unafraid of the unknown, because I'll face it all with you. Hello, I'm the reviewer. You review it, I review you. This is my partner, Mr. It. Hey, we're finally looking at a video from Quinton Reviews! Just not one of the multi-hour videos! Jesus Christ, how do you spend almost 2 straight days talking about the goddamn Beverly Hillbillies? Anyway, we're talking about his video, Back to the Future Beyond the Films.
Back to the Future is many things to me. It's one of the greatest films of all time, it's the greatest trilogy of all time, and it's just generally one of my favorite pieces of storytelling.
I sense no lies.
The first film is an absolute undeniable classic, a perfect coming-of-age story, and generally one of the smartest and funniest movies you'll ever watch.
No joke, while I am in the camp of saying that no piece of media is perfect, yeah, Back to the Future is the closest I think we'll ever get to a perfect movie.
As for the sequels, well, there's been this recent trend in the past few years where people seem to think that it's hip and cool to trash talk these two films on the basis that they don't have the same level of influence or background.
These people are designated as morons.
Which is a factor that lends itself directly into one of the most confounding aspects of these films. That they simply stopped.
Or did they?
Our modern age of filmmaking is based heavily in baiting to nostalgia and resurrecting old franchises to be rebooted and rebranded with new audiences in mind.
Or as Animaniacs put it,
reboot it, renew it, reshoot it, redo it, and reuse it, retool it, abuse it, dispute it.
All jokes aside, I do feel that whether or not this is a good thing is a case-by-case basis. Matter of execution and all that.
The fact that the original creators have outright refused to create a fourth film shows some incredible restraint and forethought.
What I'm amazed about is the fact that Universal hasn't made a sequel/reboot regardless of Zemeckis and Gale's feelings on it.
And while a select few might lament that a new movie will never happen, I couldn't be happier with the idea that we'll never see someone do to Back to the Future what others have done to Harry Potter and Jurassic Park, and that space battles thing.
I'm mixed on that mindset. While yeah, I can appreciate ending a franchise before it goes bad, I personally think that if a bad entry ruins the entire franchise for you, then you probably didn't like it all that much to begin with.
For you see...
Has more effort than a lot of our transitions.
2 years after the release of the original Back to the Future film, George Lucas created what is now one of the most famous theme park rides of all time, changing the standards of how successfully immersive a ride could be, and also how successful screen ride technology could end up becoming.
Much to the chagrin of many a theme park purist. Me, 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 me.
It was also essentially a sequel, set after the victory on Endor in Episode 6, although the inclusion of a third Death Star in the final arc stretches the established canon at least a little bit.
And yet people are shocked that when George Lucas was asked about the continuity of Hoth in The Adventures Continue, he literally said, "Who cares?"
Allegedly, Lucas gave Steven Spielberg a chance to write it before opening, and after they finished, Lucas quipped to him, "Only Disney can do things like this. You really screwed up signing with Universal. They could never do a Star Tours."
Are we sure Lucas wasn't actively trying to manifest something with that?
Thus, in 1988, Back to the Future: The Ride joined Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3 as the third sequel to be consecutively in production.
Man, between this and Jurassic Park, Spielberg really had faith that his movies would make good theme park rides.
Now, this has never been confirmed, but I theorize that it's possible that certain elements of Back to the Future 2 were left open-ended in order to make the narrative of the ride make a little bit more sense.
Okay, Quinton is going to use this to explain why Biff is so unfazed by what he sees in the ride, which is fair, but if the latter two movies were made with the ride in mind, maybe throw a little bit of that forethought into the third movie and why Doc suddenly thinks it's a good idea to rebuild the DeLorean multiple times.
So Back to the Future the Ride posits that after the third film, Doc invests his time into making his technology public and creates the Institute of Future Technology.
Now, DeLorean or no, I do like the idea that this is what Doc's doing with his life post-movie 3. He spent his entire life as a failed inventor, and now he's seeing success.
Now, the nitpicky reviewer in me is tempted to go through this whole thing and sort of discuss if it does or does not match up to what we see in all of the films.
Do it.
But Back to the Future the Ride really shouldn't be taken that seriously. Nor should pretty much any ride that attempts to lightheartedly canonize its events.
It's almost as if theme park attractions live in their own little world. Me, 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 me.
There's a lot to talk about with Back to the Future the Ride, but today the main thing most people know about it is that it doesn't exist.
Thanks, Simpsons.
Throughout the early 2000s, Universal Studios was starting to feel a little outdated. It was based mostly in the public fascination with movie making and how modern storytelling works, with many rides and attractions being based around exploring behind-the-scenes aspects of popular movies of the day. But by the turn of the millennium, DVD bonus features and the internet had made these things easy to access without leaving one's couch.
Yeah, but the studio tour here at least still has the wow factor of actually visiting the sets where these movies were filmed.
The sad fact about video-based rides is that they tend to age a lot less well than physical attractions where you actually get to go through and see real things in front of you.
I don't entirely agree. Quinton's whole argument here is that the ride is gone because of outdated filming and storytelling techniques of the era. And while this can be true of some rides, hell, look at Back to the Future's replacement, marvel at that late 2000s CG, film-based rides can be more easily updated to more modern standards, a great example being Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Universal's Islands of Adventure. In my opinion though, nothing about how Back to the Future's film content was created made it that outdated. The only problem with it is the future scene being set in 2015, which is a little over a decade ago at the time of me writing this, and you can't just update the little timepiece to a different year because 2015 being the future is something very specific to Back to the Future. And that's a problem that would exist even if this had more physical sets, like, say, E.T.
So Christopher Lloyd recently mentioned offhandedly that if he were to ever do another Back to the Future film, it would be neat if it was about climate change.
Sounds like you'd be a little bit preachy, but I'm curious to see where you go with this.
What's interesting to me, though, is that they probably wouldn't make that movie. Because they already did.
Beg pardon?
So in 1990, Warner Brothers decided to bring all of their resources at hand together to make sort of a mega crossover for Earth Day, called simply the Earth Day Special.
So essentially, the special was to climate change PSAs what Cartoon All-Stars was to drug PSAs.
It has one of Jim Henson's last performances as Kermit the Frog.
Well, that's depressing.
One of the most memorable segments in the film is where Doc Brown arrives in the DeLorean and runs in to see Mother Earth, and attempts to give the viewers in 1990 a warning of what will happen if they don't take the topic of saving the Earth more seriously.
I'm actually surprised more climate change PSAs don't take advantage of time travel as a concept.
There's hope for you yet. There's hope for all of us because we know what to do. It's all here. It's not a secret. It's not a mystery. Isn't it amazing that we humans know what to do to save ourselves and yet we don't act on it? What's wrong with us?
Despite Doc's talk of hope, that speech turned really depressing.
Well, I'm depressed now. Let's talk about a comic or something.
I think you've got one of Linkara's scripts mixed up in here.
So originally at this part of the video, I was going to review the IDW Publishing Back to the Future comic series. But while I was working on the video, I realized that I do not like the IDW Publishing Back to the Future comic series.
I do not like them, Sam I Am.
To understand why this specific adaptation of the Back to the Future story works, we have to talk about the history of the films and why they exist.
Do we? It's pretty simple, really. Telltale Games had amazing writers on staff, and they brought in Bob Gale, aka one of the original 2 writers on the trilogy, as a consultant. Okay, he does bring up a good point about how both the first movie and the game's stories are built around what it would be like to meet an adult in your life when they were your age. The movie being Marty's dad, George, and the game being Doc.
This might seem like a silly thing to say, but the mechanics and logic presented can sometimes come across as a little jarring when compared too closely to the films. People act in robotic, repetitive ways. Every element of the story is based around completing some puzzle.
Yeah, that's kind of what ends up happening when your sequel to a movie franchise is a video game.
Marty is this incredible action star who constantly avoids certain death.
While there are one or two things that go a bit beyond the kind of stuff that's in the films, nothing Marty does in the game is unbelievable for the character.
And if you can accept that Biff Tannen's dad was a famous Al Capone-style gangster that Marty has somehow never heard of, then yeah, you're gonna have a good time.
To be fair, Marty wasn't exactly a student of history before the time travel shenanigans, and even then he only became one because he lived it.
This brings us around to Back to the Future, the animated series. My personal favorite Back to the Future continuation.
Given how much you actually praise the game, and given what I know about this cartoon, I'm curious to see how you'll defend that position.
Some episodes of Back to the Future Animated are so perfectly in tune with the adventures I expect to find within Back to the Future stories that I consider them equally as important to the greater universe as the movies.
While I can agree that the writers of the show definitely did their homework in making it feel in line with the films, other than the more cartoony antics, I don't know if I'd even call certain episodes important.
And I find it impossible to imagine characters like Jules and Vern being done even slightly differently to how they're presented in the show.
To be fair, that might be because the only time these characters are ever on screen in literally anything else is in the last few minutes of Part 3. Also, that weird Italian Back to the Future ride that I'm pretty sure isn't even licensed by Universal.
And other episodes are so off the mark, so clearly created in a rush to fit broadcasting schedules, and so bad shit insane that I still have a fun time watching them.
Okay, fair.
I probably don't have to remind most of you that this show is one of the main inspirations for the Adult Swim sitcom Rick and Morty.
Really? This show specifically? Like, we all know that Rick and Morty was based on a Back to the Future parody short that its creators made, but did Harmon and Roiland even know this show existed?
What's a little weird is that while Christopher Lloyd is the presenter, he doesn't actually voice Doc in the cartoon, with Dan Castellaneta actually stepping in for the performance.
Much to my eternal annoyance and confusion.
Anyways, I know that some of you will be confused that I've chosen this show as my favorite out of the bunch, when it arguably has a lot of the biggest faults. The writers maybe didn't always understand the web of time. Marty and Jennifer might be a little off at times. Some episodes are just off the wall insane. Whatever. But to me, there's just this undeniable fun energy with the animated series that you can't help but get sucked into.
While I certainly wouldn't let that put it above the game, I can absolutely see an unironic enjoyment. Overall, while not an extensive look at Doc and Marty's continued adventures, thank God, this was still a fascinating dive into what was probably the most notable ones. I'm the Review Reviewer. You review it, I review you.